Most people wait for motivation before they act, not realizing that motivation is one of the most unreliable forces in life. It comes and goes like the weather, pleasant when it appears, but impossible to control. Discipline, on the other hand, is not an emotion. It is a quiet understanding of what must be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. Most people misunderstand motivation. They treat it as if it were a solid ground upon which a life can be built. But motivation is not a foundation. It is a feeling. And feelings, by their very nature, are fleeting. They rise, they fall, they come unannounced, and they leave without explanation. To build your life on motivation alone is like trying to build a house on moving water. You may wake up one morning feeling inspired, energized, and full of purpose. On that day, everything seems possible. You promise yourself change, you make plans, you imagine a better version of yourself. But the next morning, the feeling is gone. Nothing dramatic happened. Life simply returned to its ordinary rhythm, and suddenly, the same actions that felt exciting now feel heavy, unnecessary, or even pointless. This is not a personal failure. It is simply the nature of the human mind. The mind seeks comfort, novelty, and pleasure. Motivation often appears when something feels new or emotionally rewarding. But once familiarity sets in, the mind loses interest. If your progress depends on motivation, then progress will always be temporary. Alan Watts often pointed out that we suffer not because life is difficult, but because we misunderstand how life works. Motivation is not meant to be permanent. It was never designed to carry you through the repetitive, quiet, and sometimes boring aspects of growth. Expecting it to do so is asking a spark to burn like the sun. When motivation fades, many people stop. They assume something is wrong. They believe they have lost their passion, their purpose, or their direction. In reality, they have simply reached the moment where discipline is required. This is the turning point most people never cross. A foundation must be stable. It must remain even when conditions change. Motivation cannot do this because it depends on emotions, and emotions depend on circumstances. Discipline, however, does not ask how you feel today. It does not need excitement or inspiration. It simply responds to what must be done. Understanding this truth is uncomfortable because it removes a convenient excuse. It means you can no longer wait for the right mood. It means growth happens not when you feel ready, but when you are willing to act without emotional permission. And paradoxically, this realization is freeing. You no longer chase motivation. You stop judging yourself for not feeling inspired. You simply act, gently and consistently, trusting that feelings will follow action, not lead it. That is the quiet wisdom here. Motivation is a visitor, not a guide. Discipline is what stays when the visitor leaves. Have you ever noticed how motivation fades just when consistency is needed most? Share your experience in the comments. Your insight might help someone else see this truth more clearly. Many people hear the word discipline and immediately feel resistance. It sounds harsh, cold, even cruel. It brings images of force, control, and denial. And so the mind quietly rebels, preferring motivation instead, because motivation feels kind, exciting, and alive. But this misunderstanding keeps people trapped in cycles of starting and stopping. Discipline is not punishment. It is not violence against yourself. True discipline is an act of self-respect. When you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, something subtle but powerful happens. You begin to trust yourself. And when that trust grows, life becomes steadier. Discipline at its core is simply the decision to show up for your own life, regardless of mood, weather, or emotion. Alan Watts often reminded us that forcing the self against itself creates inner conflict. Real discipline does not come from hatred of who you are, but from care for who you are becoming. It is not about pushing harder. It is about honoring what matters. Consider how you treat someone you truly respect. You don't scream at them. You don't abandon them when things get uncomfortable. You show up, you listen, you remain consistent. Discipline is that same attitude turned inward. Most people wait until they feel disciplined. But discipline is not a feeling. It is a relationship. And like any meaningful relationship, it is built through reliability, not intensity. A little effort every day carries more power than a dramatic burst once in a while. There is a quiet dignity in doing what needs to be done without making a spectacle of it. No announcement, no emotional build-up, just simple action. This is where real strength is formed, not in moments of excitement, but in moments of ordinariness. When discipline becomes routine, it stops feeling heavy. It becomes natural, almost invisible. You no longer argue with yourself. You no longer waste energy negotiating. Action flows easily because the decision has already been made. Ironically, discipline creates more freedom, not less. When you are disciplined, you are no longer controlled by moods, distractions, or impulses. You choose your direction rather than being dragged by desire. And in that choice, there is peace. This is why discipline outlasts motivation. Motivation asks, how do I feel today? Discipline asks, what kind of person am I choosing to be? And when discipline is rooted in self-respect, it does not exhaust you, it strengthens you. Do you see discipline as self-punishment or as self-respect? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might shift someone else's understanding in a meaningful way. We often assume that our feelings are wise guides. If we feel inspired, we act. If we feel tired, bored, or uninspired, we wait. This seems natural. After all, feelings feel real. But this is precisely where most lives quietly lose their direction. Feelings are weather. Discipline is climate. Motivation rises and falls like the wind. One day it lifts you effortlessly, the next day it disappears without explanation. If your actions depend on how you feel, your life will move in circles rather than forward. Discipline, on the other hand, does not argue with the weather. It simply continues walking. Alan Watts often pointed out that the mind loves drama. It wants reasons, moods, and stories. But life itself does not wait for your emotional readiness. The sun rises whether you feel prepared or not. Growth works the same way. The great misunderstanding is believing that action should follow feeling. In reality, feeling often follows action. You don't feel confident and then act. You act and confidence slowly appears. You don't feel disciplined and then you work, and discipline takes shape within you. When you wait for motivation, you hand control of your life to temporary emotions. When you practice discipline, you take that control back. This does not mean ignoring emotions or becoming cold. It means understanding their place. Feelings are signals, not commanders. They can inform you, but they should not govern you. Discipline listens to feelings without obeying them. There will be days when nothing inside you wants to move. No inspiration, no excitement, just resistance. These moments are not failures, they are thresholds. Each time you act without emotional support, you strengthen something deeper than motivation, inner stability, and something curious happens when discipline carries you through low moods. The mind begins to relax. It no longer needs to generate constant excitement to function. It learns trust. It learns that you will show up regardless. This creates a quiet confidence that motivation can never provide. Most people live as emotional servants, working only when they feel good, stopping when they feel bad. Discipline reverses this relationship. You become the one who decides, not the mood. This is why discipline feels uncomfortable at first. It breaks an old habit, letting feelings dictate identity. But over time, it becomes liberating. You are no longer tossed around by inner storms. You move steadily, calmly, and with intention. True peace does not come from always feeling good. It comes from knowing you can act even when you don't. Do your feelings control your actions, or do your actions shape your feelings? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insight might help someone else regain control of their path. Most people believe discipline is something you apply, a kind of pressure you force onto yourself. You imagine a strict inner voice, pushing, scolding, demanding results. And naturally, you resist it. The mind does not like being bullied, even by itself. But true discipline is not force. It is identity. When you see discipline as effort, it feels heavy. When you see it as who you are, it becomes natural. You don't force yourself to breathe or to speak your language. You do these things because they are part of you. Discipline works the same way when it becomes internalized. Alan Watts often spoke about the illusion of separation, the idea that you are fighting against yourself. This inner conflict is exhausting. Discipline ends this war by dissolving it. Instead of saying, I must do this, you begin to say, this is simply what I do. A disciplined person is not someone who constantly struggles. It is someone who has decided quietly and firmly what kind of person they are. Once the decision is made, action follows with far less resistance. Think about how identity shapes behavior. If you see yourself as someone who cares about health, you don't debate whether to move your body, you move. If you see yourself as someone who respects time, you don't negotiate with procrastination, you act. Identity simplifies life. This is why willpower alone rarely lasts. Willpower fights habits. Identity replaces them. When discipline is rooted in identity, it no longer feels like self-control. It feels like self-express. Ion. You are not forcing yourself to show up. You are being honest about who you are. Of course, this identity does not appear overnight. It is built through small, repeated actions. Each time you act despite discomfort, you cast a vote for the person you are becoming. Over time, those votes accumulate, and the identity solidifies. And once discipline becomes identity, motivation becomes irrelevant. You no longer ask, do I feel like it? You ask, is this aligned with who I am? The answer becomes obvious. There is also a deep calm in this shift. When discipline is force, you are tense. When discipline is identity, you are relaxed. You are not fighting yourself. You are cooperating with yourself. This is the quiet power most people never discover. They exhaust themselves trying to control behavior instead of shaping identity. But when identity changes, behavior follows effortlessly. Discipline is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you decided to be and honoring that decision moment by moment. Do you see discipline as something you force or something that defines you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective could help someone else make a powerful shift. We often imagine discipline as something that requires intensity, early mornings, rigid schedules, extreme effort. But this belief quietly destroys consistency. When discipline feels heavy, the mind looks for escape. What we call laziness is often just overwhelm. True discipline is gentle. It grows best in simplicity. Alan Watts reminded us that nature does not rush, yet everything is accomplished. The tree does not strain to grow taller. It simply grows, one ring at a time. Discipline follows the same rhythm when we allow it to. Most people fail not because they lack discipline, but because they demand too much from themselves too quickly. They try to transform their entire life in a single moment of motivation. And when the pressure becomes unbearable, they collapse and then blame themselves. But discipline does not require dramatic change. It requires clear and small movement. When you simplify your goals, discipline becomes sustainable. One focused action done daily is more powerful than 1,000 intentions never acted upon. Simplicity removes the noise that confuses the mind and drains energy. Pressure creates resistance. Simplicity creates flow. Notice how your mind reacts when a task feels huge. It tightens, it delays, it negotiates. But when the task is small and clear, the mind relaxes and cooperates. Discipline thrives in this relaxed state. This is why routines matter, not because they are strict, but because they remove decision-making. When life is simplified, discipline becomes automatic. You do not wake up every day deciding what to do, you already know. In this way, discipline is less about control and more about design. You design your environment, your habits, and your expectations so that discipline is the easiest option. There is also compassion in simplicity. You stop punishing yourself for being human. You allow room for mistakes without abandoning the path. This gentle approach builds trust with yourself, and trust is the foundation of long-term discipline. Alan Watts often spoke about harmony, living in alignment rather than opposition. Simplicity creates harmony between your intentions and your actions. You are no longer dragging yourself forward, you are walking naturally. When discipline becomes simple, it stops feeling heroic and starts feeling ordinary. And that is where its true power lies. Ordinary actions, repeated daily, quietly shape extraordinary lives. You do not need more pressure. You need less clutter. Discipline does not ask you to become harsher with yourself. It asks you to become clearer. Where in your L? Are you making discipline harder than it needs to be? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insight may help someone simplify their path and stay consistent. We live in a world obsessed with motivation, quotes, videos, and speeches promising to ignite a fire inside us. Yet, despite all this inspiration, most people drift, never truly achieving what they desire. Motivation is like lightning, brilliant, illuminating, but gone in an instant. Discipline, on the other hand, is like the sun. It rises day after day, quietly shaping the landscape of our lives. Alan Watts often reminded us that the universe moves in rhythms and patterns, not in bursts of frantic effort. Motivation is a burst. Discipline is rhythm. Motivation excites you. Discipline carries you. One can feel inspired today and overwhelmed tomorrow, but if you rely solely on motivation, success becomes a fragile illusion, always dependent on your emotional highs. The truth is simple yet overlooked. Life rewards consistency, not intensity. You can be highly motivated for 1 week and achieve nothing lasting. But small, disciplined actions, repeated daily, compound into unstoppable momentum. A single drop of water falls on a stone day after day, and eventually even the hardest rock wears away. Motivation may start the journey, but discipline ensures you finish it. Why does motivation fail so often? Because it's conditional. Motivation thrives on excitement, external validation, and ideal conditions. It vanishes when the task becomes hard, boring, or uncomfortable. Discipline doesn't require these conditions. Discipline operates independently of mood, energy, or external praise. It is self-sustaining because it is rooted in commitment rather than emotion. Alan Watts would suggest that we stop chasing ephemeral feelings and focus on patterns. Think of your life as a garden. Motivation may plant a seed, but discipline waters it every day, regardless of sunshine or rain. Discipline is the quiet caretaker, moving with patience and trust in the process. Motivation says, I feel like doing it today, while discipline says, I do it because it matters. Another key insight is that discipline liberates you. Many see it as restriction, something that limits freedom. But true discipline is freedom in structure. When your life is guided by reliable habits and daily actions, you are free from the chaos of constant indecision and distraction. Motivation is unreliable, but discipline is your anchor in a stormy sea. Remember, discipline is not about being harsh or punishing yourself. It is about creating trust with yourself. When you show up consistently, even when you don't feel like it, you reinforce the belief that you can rely on yourself. That belief is far more powerful than any temporary burst of motivation. Where have you relied on motivation alone, only to fall short? How could you bring discipline into that area of your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your reflection could inspire someone else to stay consistent and achieve what truly matters. In our culture, we are taught to chase results relentlessly, to measure our lives by achievements, titles, or numbers. Yet the paradox is that the more we fixate on outcomes, the less we actually enjoy life, and the less likely we are to succeed. Alan Watts often emphasized that life is not a race to a finish line, it is a dance, a melody, a process to be experienced fully. The outcome is important, but it is the journey that shapes who we are. When we focus solely on the end goal, success, wealth, recognition, we disconnect from the present moment. We miss the subtle lessons, the small wins, and the growth that comes with each step. Discipline without presence becomes mechanical, cold, and unsatisfying. Motivation without presence becomes fleeting, like chasing shadows. But when we embrace the process, each action, each choice becomes meaningful, regardless of immediate results. Imagine a musician practicing daily. The joy is not in the performance alone, nor in the applause, but in the hours spent touching the keys, feeling the vibration of music, and refining technique. Similarly, life rewards those who immerse themselves in their craft, their work, and their growth, rather than obsessing over what others will see or how soon the reward comes. Success is not just an event. It is the accumulation of moments lived fully and deliberately. Alan Watts would often remind us that attachment to results breeds tension and anxiety. We become prisoners of what ifs and not enoughs. When we focus on the process, we free ourselves from this self-imposed pressure. We begin to flow with life rather than fight it. Each small, consistent effort, each disciplined habit is a brick building the foundation of lasting achievement. Outcomes naturally follow when the process is respected. Another vital aspect is patience. Life's greatest rewards rarely arrive instantly. Discipline and presence teach patience, not the passive kind, but the active patience of engagement. It is a trust that consistent effort, guided by awareness and intention, will bear fruit. Just as a river carves valleys over centuries, your disciplined actions gradually shape your destiny. The process itself becomes your teacher, revealing insights, resilience, and wisdom along the way. Embracing the process also allows for joy in the journey. Each step becomes an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to experience life deeply. You stop living in anticipation of a future moment and start appreciating the richness of now. Discipline without presence is empty. Motivation without engagement is fleeting. But when you marry the two with an awareness of the present, life itself becomes your reward. How often do you find yourself fixating on results instead of immersing in the journey? Share a moment where focusing on the process brought unexpected growth or satisfaction. Write your thoughts in the comments below. Your story could remind someone else to value the journey, not just the destination. So often we think that to succeed, to achieve, or to grow, we must push relentlessly, control every outcome, and dominate the circumstances around us. We associate mastery with force, force over others, force over our environment, force over ourselves. Yet, Alan Watts teaches us a profound paradox. True mastery is not about force at all. It is about harmony. It is about moving with the natural flow of life, not against it. When we learn to work with life, rather than try to conquer it, we achieve more effortlessly and with greater satisfaction. Consider the way a skilled surfer rides a wave. The surfer does not fight the ocean. They do not demand the wave to obey their will. Instead, they feel the wave, anticipate its rhythm, and adjust their movements to move in harmony with it. The same principle applies to life. When you force progress, when you try to push every situation to bend to your desire, resistance grows, energy is wasted, and stress multiplies. Discipline without harmony leads to tension. Effort without alignment leads to frustration. True mastery, Watts would argue, comes from awareness and attunement, being fully present and moving with the currents rather than against them. This doesn't mean passivity or complacency. On the contrary, it is an active engagement with life. It is the kind of disciplined, intentional action that respects timing, context, and the natural flow of circumstances. You learn to recognize when to act and when to yield, when to push and when to step back. In relationships, work, creativity, and personal growth, those who harmonize with the natural rhythm of life often reach levels of success, clarity, and fulfillment far beyond what brute force can achieve. Another aspect of this harmony is self-mastery. To act with harmony, you must first understand yourself, your desires, your limits, and your inner nature. When your inner world is in balance, your actions naturally resonate with the world around you. Conversely, when you are driven by compulsions, fear, or ego, your efforts clash with reality, leading to struggle and disappointment. True mastery begins within. It is cultivated by self-awareness, reflection, and the willingness to flow with life rather than impose upon it. Alan Watts also reminds us that life itself is a creative play. Why a dance, and our role is to participate with elegance and awareness. Mastery is not measured by the control we exert, but by the harmony we embody and radiate. When we achieve this, discipline becomes effortless, motivation becomes intrinsic, and success becomes a natural byproduct rather than a forced outcome. How often do you try to force outcomes instead of moving with life's flow? Can you recall a moment when harmony, patience, or attunement led to unexpected success or insight? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your reflection might help someone else discover the subtle power of flow and presence in their own life.